you may want to say something at the very beginning of your 33rd anniversary.
Thank you, Joep, and thank you for hosting this. And hello, everybody. And as you said, it's so nice to see so many familiar faces, and I think one or two that are not so familiar here. So it's a real pleasure. And thank you for Antonia for being in the technical background here. Actually, I don't really have very much special to say today. I feel quite blank in a way. I feel that we're in the middle of a kind of. I've been on fire for the last few weeks, and now we're sort of in a global ceasefire, which I would hope would hold for a long time, but we really don't know, do we? Exactly. It's really interesting, though, to see the effect I sense in myself of Trump's messaging, actually, of Donald Trump's messaging. You know, his threats and the way he threatens and the effect that can have, actually. I noticed the effect it can have on me and the effect of now there's ceasefire and everything. The effect, in other words, of global events. I'm wondering if other people, if everybody is affected like this, or just, you know, a number of us that are being affected and other people are quite dispassionate about the whole thing. But that's just a random set of thoughts which are coming through me right now. Otherwise, I don't have anything, I think, special. And I think I'll turn it back to you, Joep. Thank you so much for being here while Nadia's away, probably just landed in Japan, where she's going to be for the next month.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, so that's to me, as some of you may have seen, I did send out earlier today a reminder on LinkedIn, and to me it feels really like an honor, you know, to be here and to do this. It's the first time for me that I'm playing this role or having this role. And it's quite special anyways to me. So this is why this 33rd session AMA call is special to me anyways. Having said that, I guess it is really about Ask Me Anything. So questions for Peter that will come up. And for that, Antonia will create a number of breakout rooms, and you'll have a few moments, anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes. I think we decided to talk to each other, to get your voice into the room, which I think is important, and to think about what is it that you might want to ask Peter, referring to what he just said, the changes, the big things happening in the world. I guess the IMF spoke today about what's happening to inflation and world growth and money, and maybe something completely different. So, Antonia, if you could arrange and let us go into breakout rooms.
Rooms are ready.
And we'll see you back in about 7 minutes.
Yeah. See you later.
See you. Welcome back. I hope you had a great 7 minutes with somebody that you either knew or didn't know. And I hope some questions came up, because otherwise we'll have a long silence, which is great as well. But and I actually do have some questions for Peter myself. But who would like to take the floor? And you could either raise your hand, raise the hand in the screen, just raise your hand on whatever way, and fire along. I see something in my screen now. That, yeah, okay, here we are. So there is Julia. If I see it well, you raise your hand in the screen. So please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Peter. Well, so my question concerns about how do you see financial future? So like, is there any sort of feeling you have when you look into 20 years? Where is the financial system? Are we still having money? What do you think? Where is it like heading to, or where could it go? How could it look like in maybe the best case scenario, the worst case scenario? I don't know, but do you have any visions? Visionary, yeah.
Well, thank you for that question. I answered that question to myself about over 25 years ago. And actually, my answer hasn't really changed. So, in the sense that, before that time, there wasn't any digital currency was only just starting then. But actually, it sort of started and then got knocked out pretty quickly, but then came in another way later. But what I was already seeing was the proliferation of other currencies, and that's what I see actually happening. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Proliferation,
Proliferation
or
means
in German?
expansion of number of different currencies and exchange systems. And in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, we had so-called complementary currencies, and these were not new. There were many of them around in the 1930s, sort of currencies not formed by the central bank, but anybody can create a currency. You could create a currency. Actually, all you need is people that accept the money that you create.
Mhm.
So when people understand this, anybody can actually create money. And as we become more conscious, more and more people understand this. I mean, Bitcoin is a typical example, but even American Express is an example. So before there was an American Express, the founder of American Express suddenly thought, oh, I can create money. And he created American Express. And Diners Club, the same. And, Visa was created by bankers, actually, a group of bankers. It wasn't created by a central bank.
Okay.
So I see this movement actually continuing, but what is developing is more refinement with the systems. And of course, increasing refinement as money goes digital. And going beyond that, and we have an expert on this in the room, Anna Maria Schmaltz, it goes beyond actually currencies, it goes beyond money. So it goes to exchange of sophisticated exchange of resources, of which money is just one. And with digital systems and with so-called blockchain, these exchange processes can be made more and more sophisticated, locally, regionally, and globally, and connect with one another. And this is the movement that we're seeing happening. Now, if you project this out into the future, as you've asked, there's a wonderful book which is actually a novel called Liquid Rain. The word rain is ruling, R-E-I-G-N. R-E-I-G-N. Rain, like king.
Yeah.
Okay?
R-E-I-N, yeah.
Yeah. And there the author is looking to 2050 and beyond. And it's a story, it's a wonderful novel. But actually what he's envisaging is that most of our time as we become more democratic is that, and this is illusory and utopian, but he sees that actually resources, we all have enough resources. So what we will be doing is spending most of our time voting on things in a democratic society. So that's how he envisages the utopian future, that you won't be worried about money because you won't need to be worried about money. Everything will be flowing. But you will be concerned about how your decision making is playing out in terms of voting. And then the sophistication that we see in money will actually be turned into voting processes. So this is really going out even further than your question.
Yeah.
But I take the liberty to be a bit visionary here. And if you're interested, just have a look at this book, because it's fascinating what he has done in the author. At the end of each chapter of this novel, he's listed a whole set of links of inventions, digital inventions that are already here. So it's incredibly visionary, but it's based on stuff which is happening right now. Like, you know, he wrote this long before artificial intelligence, but he was already seeing what's happening now, that you can talk to your computer and it's transcribing everything. He's already seeing all of that, that you will have an assistant that will know you better than you know yourself. And will be, you know, you will be telling you, suggesting things that you should do each day, etc., etc., etc. It's really visionary. So if you like this stuff, Liquid Rain.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a long answer.
Yeah,
but it's a fascinating question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is really the analog money really history soon?
In some ways, it's going that way. But where I'm living in Switzerland, I don't know where you are, in Germany?
Austria.
In Switzerland, we are attached to it. In Sweden, it's virtually gone. In Denmark, in the northern countries, we'll see. There's a group you might be interested in. I think I wanted to mention this to Monica Kaluori, who's here. There's a group called the League of Leading Ladies. The League of Leading Ladies, run from Switzerland, and they have Bargespräche.
Oh, yeah, nice.
I was going to suggest to Monica, and maybe she'll comment on this, that she should create Bargeldgespräche. Which I think would be a nice variation.
Great. LLL.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Julia. Thank
you, Peter. I like the idea. Yeah. Yeah.
We can talk more about it, Monica.
Thank you.
Because as I think you know, the founder lives just up the road from you.
Nice, and thank you, Peter, for this view into the future. I mean, I do take the liberty to ask then straight away. I mean, I remember that one of the first encounters I had with your work is that which really to me was that money is just a projection. Will that stay? Or I mean, when I hear you talking about liquid rain, I'm sort of losing sight of that it's a projection, which I thought was very, anyways, I thought that was fascinating. I still find that fascinating.
Well, in a sense, the more it becomes digital, the more obvious it is that it's a projection. Because, you know, there's nothing, you know, money was originally, and is often thought till today, as something physical because of bargeld, because of cash, because of the paper and the and the coin. But those that like Bernard Lietaer, you know, systems thinkers, said no. Money is not a coin; it's a promise. And of course, that is already obvious that that's a projection onto wherever the medium is. And the more it becomes digital and not touchable at all, the more I think it's obvious that it's coming from our heads and projected onto empty space. So I don't think that changes at all.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions that bubbled up when you had your one-on-ones, or that maybe bubbled up because of the conversation that just took place? I'm always fascinated.
And I just remind that, the field we're in, when Nadia is here, she just does choose people if there's nobody else that comes.
That's a good, that sounds like a wonderful suggestion. But I see that Antonia, I mean, and I have some questions myself, but I mean, I feel this is like but I have other opportunities to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Antonia, you go. You're still muted.
Yeah, actually, I have a question that we carry since several calls, and I'm curious on if you might have had insights about this, because several AMA calls ago, someone asked a source question about how does it work when we introduce someone to someone? Like, especially when it turns into, for example, a business collaboration or a relationship. It was like how do we like what is our responsibility as the person introducing people to each other? And we didn't come far in that respective AMA call. And I maybe if we get one little glimpse further today, it would be inspiring, because I know that it really stayed with several people who attended the call, especially when something goes like not ideal, and then we feel like we are still responsible. So maybe you can just touch on this where you're at.
Thank you. Yes, this was a very interesting question, which I hadn't really reflected on before, although I very frequently put people in touch with each other, and frequently I'm making this connection. And I look at myself and I see, at some level, I do take responsibility for the result, and I'm delighted when the result is good, of course. But I think I don't take 100% responsibility if the result is good or bad, because I think the connection, once it's made, the responsibility does lie for what happens in the connection with the individuals involved. So I'm not sure if I have a really good answer to this, but of course it would also depend on I'm talking about myself, my intention of this. And I think, if the intention is sound, then that is really what really matters. If I had a bad intention in putting people together, I think if it didn't work out, I would.
Yeah, but actually, when I listen to it, it's interesting, because when we look from the source perspective and we see the different levels of, because we have these different, even with two people, we have the layer of who is the source of the friendship, of the romantic relationship, of the marriage or whatever, or of the business collaboration. So when I look now, when I listen to you, it's like, okay, we might be the source of this first, that they get to know each other, know of each other, And then when they start something together, one of them will be the source of that.
That's right. Yes.
So if they go into a business relationship or another, this will have one source between them, right?
Right. I think you're clarifying it. So we acknowledge ourselves as the source of the connection, but we can't be really source of the result of what happens with the connection, because they've got to take responsibility for that themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And obviously, because they are not, like, the picture that I see is like I put two magnets together and then they do whatever they do, and then they are in their own fields, because they're not creating something in my field only because I introduce them to each other.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I have further. I don't know if someone else has something.
Yeah, maybe it'd be interesting to hear if anybody else has
some more ideas. Yeah.
Yes, some more input here, and maybe from experience. How has it been for you when you've made connections between two people or with two groups or something like that?
Okay. I get a warning that my internet connection is unstable, but I'd like to follow up, Peter, on your suggestion. You say what Nadia does. If your camera is on, you run the risk that I may ask you to step forward and say something. And I'm gonna use that because I think, well, looking at the screen, I personally know from calls, so that's not maybe personally, I know everyone, but there is one person that I don't know. So, and I don't even know if she is aware of this, that you can turn off the screen, your camera, and then not being asked. But Marie Mikoskami, you are new to me.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
You're right.
Oh
So,
my God.
so,
Unfortunately, yes.
okay, well,
And
wonderful, wonderful,
hello, everyone. Yes.
and wonderful that
I'm
you're
Marie.
here. Yeah, wonderful that
Yeah.
you're here. And
Thank you.
maybe two things then from my end. What brought you here? It was not that you just clicked a link. I think it was a deliberate choice. So, what brought you here? And where are you calling in from? And maybe the third thing, is there anything you'd like to ask, Peter, as you're on
Thank
stage
you. Thank you
anyway?
so much. Yeah. Hi, I'm Marie and live in Budapest, Hungary, and born in Tokyo. So I think Nadia and me switched
Yeah.
Europe and Japan, maybe. So thank you for having me. And this is first time to join this event. And I came here because I took a trial session in Japan and webinar, and it's inner work and money work, and it was so powerful for me. So I'd like to know what is source and what is money work, and my journey, where will my journey go? So I'm here, and yeah, and I also think in Japan, no, gender huge gender gap still are there. So I would like to share, especially to Japanese women, about a kind of this idea. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Peter, and as I told you all, I live in Budapest, Hungary, and as you all know, the election has held, and the opposition party won. And yeah, it was great change and huge change. And on the other hand, I wondered, Mr. Orban had started his politician career. He was anti-Soviet Union at first, but now he is so close to Russia and surrounded them. So when the source mind or the presence at source has changed, how should we react or do?
That's a beautiful question. I think, at least, Peter, I think I understand the question. You see, you nodding as well. So you're basically asking, Marie, if I understand you well, what happens if the source changes his policies, his mind, his behavior?
Yes,
exactly. And what's then? So, Peter, this is a beautiful question and a challenging one as well. Thank you, Marie, for
it's very it's because it's very opposition side, anti-Soviet Union and close to Russia. So yeah, I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, and thank you for being willing to respond to Joep. And it's fascinating you being Japanese in Hungary at the moment.
Mixed.
I'd love to ask what you're doing there, but we won't go into all of that. That's for another time. But your question is also very interesting. So what we look at in a source perspective is the clarity of the source in terms of their consciousness. That's the key. So, we all have what I like to call our pathologies or areas that we need to develop. And, if we're acting out of a kind of irrational fear, then we may be taking decisions that are not out of consciousness and are also not clear. And this can lead to all sorts of changing things that we do and say. I mean, if you look at what Donald Trump is doing and saying right now, it changes every 2 or 3 days. And if you tune into that, I can't say that there's a tremendous amount of clarity there that one can see or feel. So I think with Viktor Orban, I wouldn't like to judge at the moment the degree of clarity of consciousness that is playing out. But just before coming on to this call, Joep and Antonio and I were discussing a little bit what's going on just worldwide, and saying that the old affiliations, like the old party affiliations that we've known for so many years, seem to be breaking up just about everywhere. So Magyar, is coming quite recently onto the scene with virtually a new party and no party. And this seems to be what's happening globally at the moment, that old affiliations, old associations are no longer so prevalent, so much in place as they used to be. And I was sort of joking and saying, what is left is now right, and what is right is left. And, one can't really follow a lot of what's going on. And your question leads right into that. And so things are breaking up all over the place. That's what seems to be happening right now, and are difficult to follow. And I think what's happening in Hungary is very much part of that, and very much indicative of the same thing. And it does raise the question, you know, there's been a very popular vote for Magyar right now, but how he will be able to carry that is a big question. Whether he will be able to really play a different line and a different role, how different he will be from Orban in the end. And I'd just like to add one thing. For those of you that are familiar with family constellation work, do you know about that, Murray? So I just mentioned, when you take a particular role, as Magyar has taken, it's like you might have been in opposition and have opinions and have good intentions of where you go, but you come into this role. Now he's prime minister or whatever it is called in Hungary, and you don't come in as Magyar, you actually take on a role which has some kind of archetypical associations. It's like I remember somebody very, very long ago saying, you know, when you get married, you don't just marry a person, you marry an archetype with everything that is related to that archetype. And it's good to be aware of that. And in one of my conferences or congresses in 2021, we tried that out in the Congress. And I said to some of the people there, you play now the president of Austria, because I wasn't able to get the president of Austria to the Congress. And I said, somebody else, you play Elon Musk, and you play. So we had a number of people, Catherine Lagarde. And I can tell you that when the people I chose tuned in to this energy, they were incredible. They were incredible in change, almost a change of personality. And any of us can do this, but I think it happens almost automatically if you become prime minister or you come into a formal role like this, you know, like Donald Trump or Biden or any of them. One is coming into a field, and if one's not totally conscious, one's going to be acting like a puppet. So I share that with you, and maybe there are some further comments around that aspect while I'm trying to avoid the sun just coming in onto my picture.
Because I don't know, Murray. Do you have a follow-up question for Peter? Otherwise, I do want to provoke you a little bit, Peter, on this very topic, if I understand Marie's question well. But I'd first like to check whether she wants to address this any further.
Actually, my English level is awful, so now I try to
Okay, you need to digest
understand. Yes.
Okay. Peter, let me just
thank you, Mary.
Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to build on your question, Marie, because I feel, Peter, it's not been, that's why I called it provocative. It's not been fully addressed to the level that I understand it. I mean, when she looked at Orban as a source, and the source had a certain behavior, worked with his people, and now I'd like to take it away from the politics then, and the provocative part is when I heard you speak about it's also a developing and a growing conscious, and now let's assume we just had a conversation and I checked with you, and money is a projection. You confirmed that, and you said even in the future that might be the case. But now you, as the source of that whole notion and been sharing that with us for a long time, all of a sudden you would say that's completely wrong. It's not a projection. I mean, just imagine what does that mean to you as the source of the original idea?
if I suddenly feel I've made a mistake or what?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't.
So you say, this is
Or I change.
Yeah.
Well, I come back to this whole notion of consciousness.
Yeah.
So it's possible that with development of consciousness, so I've put out this idea that money is a projection, right? Now, if I come up with a better idea consciously,
Yeah.
I will come up with a better idea consciously. But for me, it needs to be an improvement and a more conscious improvement, because any idea is not the ultimate truth.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is actually the ultimate truth. But at the moment, there has been and continues to be continual mileage in this notion of projection,
Yeah.
which is very helpful.
Yeah.
But I would never claim that anything like money is a projection, or even the whole work I've done on researching source is an ultimate truth. It's all just a story.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very good story for now.
Yeah.
That's what my suggestion is.
Yes.
And the story can develop. And I'm encouraging everybody in my field to continue to develop, of course, and to develop the story. So I'm not to make it clear, I'm not attached to my own stories, but I believe that stories are very useful, and I believe the stories I've created are very, very useful stories for the time being. That's my answer.
We agree there.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Marie. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We have some 10 more minutes to go. Well, a little longer. Anybody else who would like to raise
Kerst has got his hand up.
Go.
Hi, Kerst.
Hi, Peter. Yes. Thanks. I wonder, we have so many big corporations at this time. And although they seem to be struggling, they are still running relatively well, partially for 100 years or so. Do you still see sources in them, or are they running completely without a source?
No, they all have sources. And this is fascinating, Kirst. If you take the time and you have a question around them, it really is a fascinating piece of detective work to try and figure out who the source is right now. And I've done that in a couple of places. And when you do, and you're able to find the individual who is source, or just have an idea about it, you'll see it explains a lot of the things happening. Like I was asked, who was the source of the euro once? The euro. Yes, there must have been a source because there is a euro. So I started researching it, and I always forget its name. It's the German guy with bushy eyebrows. You'll know who I mean.
Theo Weigel?
Yes.
Okay.
When I did my research, I found it was Theo Weigel. And in 2008 and 2009, when there was all that chaos around Greece, I looked up specially to see what he was saying. And he was the only person, other than Yanis Varoufakis, who was in the middle of it all, he was the only person who was clear. His statements, everything was clear around the euro at that time. And, that's what's so fascinating. If you take the trouble to look, you get information which is actually key information, and figure out what's happening in the situation. I'll give you another example. I was very minimally, microly involved with, but it was involved with a company called Tesco, who I think you may have heard of. They're a large food chain in the UK, very large, the biggest. And there was a smaller company, but also a big company, which is their wholesaler called Booker. And formerly, Tesco made a takeover for Booker. But actually, the source of the takeover was the source of Booker. And even the media picked that up in some way or other, even while they were talking about the takeover from Tesco, because they didn't pay any attention at all to the CEO of Tesco. They were paying all the attention and reporting all the time about the CEO of Booker. So, you know, people who are intuitive move to the right place anyway. But if you followed what the CEO of Booker was doing, you could see how actually it was Booker taking over Tesco and not the other way around. And, you know, there you had two actually very large companies, one a lot smaller than the other, but you could see who was actually taking over whom at that time if you followed it. And otherwise it would be difficult to really figure out what was going on. So I just give that as another example. And I think it's always possible to find.
Have you traced that over decades, actually, and even succession of source in such large companies?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Like with Tesco, I was able to, you know, I really did my research there because I was fascinated to see and going back. And, you know, you can see where the sources, where the history is not being reported, there's a problem. And sometimes it's difficult to follow and track. But there are clues. And with Tesco, you could see all the problems they were having was absolutely related to the source and the source pathology and what happened with the pathologies there and what happened with the whole company and the boards and everything. You could understand it all by tracking it back to the source and the break of source, and then the whole thing going into a complete vacuum, going corruption and everything, and then being ripe for this takeover, actually, which, you know, the change of culture and everything. So, you know, as I say, if it really interests you, just I can fully recommend doing it because it's really, if you're involved or you have some question around it, you know, like from a client, it's really worth spending the time. And there's so much information in the public domain. You don't even have to meet the people there. But if you meet people, and particularly if you meet people who've been around for a while, it's very interesting because you get the information from the horse's mouth then.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
And if I may add to that question of Kirst, Peter, I mean, and Kirst already took one step when he talked about decades, but what happens if an organization like IBM or British Telecom, who have hundreds of thousands of employees, the founders have all been dead. Actually, their successors have been dead. I mean, if you look at the hierarchical way, would you still? Yeah, I mean, I understand that what you say, but is it possible, in your view, to find the source and to trace it down when you talk about these numbers? And
I go from the assumption that where there is an organization or a company which is a living, which is moving, you know, which is active, there has to be a source in there. So I start just from that assumption.
Okay, yeah.
And then we track back. What I usually do is I track back to the original founder. If you look at Unilever, for example, and Paul, what's his name?
Pullman.
Paul, thank you, Paul Pullman. If you look at what he did when he became CEO Unilever, the first thing he did, he went up to the founding factory of Lever Brothers, and he tells the story of how he walked around in the old area. And this is key. It's like sensing out the origin, because if it's still alive, the original values are still alive. And the present source needs to dock into the values in order to keep the whole thing alive. And if you follow the whole story, when Paul Polman got kicked out, he kind of lost it. He lost the story. That was the problem. He got attacked by the shareholders and got into fear and lost the story. And that's why he got kicked out. And it's the same that happened with Danone. It's like, I don't want to criticize them. The challenges are enormous. But if you look at it from a source perspective, you can really understand then what's going on and what happened there.
Yeah, thank you. Kerst, any further questions?
Yeah, one question comes up for me at that moment, and that is, can you pick up source just from the field? You said that the CEO went around in the original factory and somehow picked up the energy there.
Yeah.
So he picked up source actively.
Well, he was tuning in to the original. He was, it somehow passed to him before that, I'm sure, in terms of succession. Somehow he picked it up in the succession. I don't think he picked it up at that moment. I don't know. One would have to inquire of him. But he certainly was called almost to go round and sense it and feel it.
He made himself available.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I see.
I had, I just to relate, because you asked how many years, I had a similar experience with Desjardins Bank in Quebec. It's like there I came across somebody and they were trying to bring back the old values, and they had the history. They were doing it with the history of the founding of Desjardins. And that is powerful. You go back to the values, you go back to the history of the origins, and it's amazing what power that has in present time. That is what I'm saying, is the source work really at work. And if that's been cancelled in some kind of way, you just see all the problems, all the conflicts, confusion, and people, the disorientation. It's like the origins, the values create the orientation for the present.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
Further questions?
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Peter, I noticed that we have if we stick to the clock,
time has flown.
Yeah, time has passed by so quickly. So my apologies to those of you who had a question. You'll have to wait till AMA 34 to raise them and be present. And I don't know, Peter, if you want to.
I'll just say a final word, if I may.
Yeah, please.
The final word, I'd say, if anybody wants to know, how the source is kept through generations, then I'll say in this room, anybody just ask Mari, because the Japanese are the experts at this. The Japanese have the oldest companies in the world. Isn't that right, Mari? And I once counted up how many, Google there's somewhere in Google, I looked up, I think the oldest 1,000 companies who are more than 300 years old. And I counted, because there's a list produced, 554 were Japanese or are Japanese. of 1,000 companies that have been around for more than 300 years or something like that. So,
That's a very helpful perspective, actually, I would say, Peter. So,
yes.
for those final words.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here, and let me step in the best of the traditions that Nadia has established, which is to unmute yourself and to find somebody in the tile next to you or above you or below you and just give them a little massage or rub, or anyway, send them some love. And thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being around.
Bye. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Adios.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.